So what I have in front of me right now is the Venus flytrap. And these are all typicals, except for these in the back. These are all typicals that I got from Lowe's or Home Depot. And I want to preface that because they are not the strongest. Now, getting plants from places like California Carnivorous is definitely going to give you an advantage when growing these, because they are going to be much healthier and much stronger. These are rescue plants, I call them. They grow in those death cubes, and so right off the bat they have given a bad shake at life, but they are able to be brought back. Now, Venus flytraps have gotten a really bad rap, as you saw in the beginning, for being difficult plants to grow, and they are not. As a matter of fact, I find them to be one of the easiest carnivorous plants to grow, as long as you follow a few simple rules. And so that is what I'm going to share with you today in this video. Now, rule number one is soil. Now, Venus flytraps live right on the edge of in pine barrens of North and South Carolina, and that soil is very nutrient poor, but also has good airflow to the roots. And so how you can mimic this is by using peat moss and perlite, and you can also add in some blasting sand if you would like, but I just grow mine in peat and perlite. And so the perlite allows those roots to aerate and breathe. If you just do 100% peat, they may do all right for a little bit, but the soil will begin to compact over time, and that compacting can lead to anaerobic conditions, which will result in root rot. As far as light, these plants love bright, hot light. They want a ton of light, so you're not gonna be giving them too much light. And the way you can tell, for the most part, is they will start to color up for you and get this nice little orange hue in there. Not all of them, but most of them will, and they'll let you know that they're healthy, but they'll also get nice upright leaves during this time of the year, spring and summer, and you know that they are getting enough light. Now, they can experience a little bit of sunburn, like this one right here, but for the most part, as long as you acclimate them, which we'll talk about in a minute, you will be just fine. As far as water, they are going to want rainwater, RO water, or distilled water. These are a little bit more susceptible or a little bit more cranky when it comes to other waters. Like Dionaea, you can get away with a higher, what's called parts per million, but Venus flytraps like 50 parts per million or less. And if you use those 3 types of waters I just described, you will be all set. If you want to use your tap water, just get a TDS meter. They're very cheap on Amazon, and you will be able to test your water. 50 parts per million is what you will need. You can go a little higher than that, but you want to keep it relatively around there. Now, as far as food, if you want to grow them indoors, it's very difficult. Not very difficult, but it's not the greatest. They love to be outside in this sun. So if you do grow them outside, you don't really need to worry about feeding them. They're gonna be able to catch all the food they need through the insects that they lure in. As you can see here, they do a nice job of collecting insects. And so here's another one. And so they'll do just fine with that. Now, if you do grow them outside, a lot of people wonder about top watering. These plants get rained on all the time, and so they'll be fine with rainwater. But if you do need to water them, top water them, just try not to get it right on the crown, as they can get crown rot. You want to make sure to water around the edges, and also provide them with good airflow. Now, if you're growing them outside, they're going to get plenty of airflow. If you're growing them inside, perhaps use a fan or some area where there's some room for them to breathe. Now, again, as far as water height, you always want to have them sitting in some type of water level. So usually I do about 1 inch up the pot, give them good amount, but not something where they're drenched. Like a Dionaea, they can go much higher. Even Sarracenia can go much higher for their water. But for a Venus flytrap, You want to give them about an inch. You can go a little bit higher. In the cooler months, especially if you're going to have a freeze, you certainly can do more water to prevent them from getting freeze dry on their root bulbs. But other than that, they will be fine. Now, let's talk about how to diagnose them. If your leaves are looking long and spindly, so I just got this one in, I'll show it. This is a B52 by Ginormous, I think. But you see how these are all long and spindly and like hanging down? That is because they were light starved, because they were in shipping in box. Normally, for most cultivars, they'll be sitting straight up when they are getting enough light, like these, which have been outside. So if you're seeing long, spindly petioles, other than if you're in certain cultivars, that is a good sign that they are light starved. If they start turning yellow, they may have a nutrient deficiency, but like I said, if you grow them outside, they will get all the nutrition they need. Now, it's important to note that they don't capture food for the growing. They do that for the nitrogen to help them fertilize. Just like any other plants, they need that photosynthesis for that energy to produce these traps. And so they are going to get that from the light. So light is very, very important. And as far as food, they produce a, I guess, protein called chitinase, which breaks down the exoskeletons of flies. So you don't want to give them any food that is like people food. You don't want to give them steak or cheese or anything like that. They are not animals, they are plants. And so they're going to be able to break it down with that chitinase. Let's see what else I can tell you about these beautiful plants. You're gonna notice that their leaves die, and that is perfectly normal. Most carnivorous plants, especially Venus flytraps, have a very, very fast leaf turnover rate. And so they are going to die off and grow new leaves consistently throughout the course of their life. And so if you start to see your leaves dying off at the base, that is completely fine. They are going to grow more for you, and that is normal. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. I will tell you, if your traps are sluggish to close, you don't want to mess with them too much because it takes a lot of energy. But if they're sluggish to close and close really slowly, it is a sign that they're in a weakened state. Normally you'll see that when you first get them out of the box, or if they've been shipped. They will bounce back over time. You want to make sure that you don't trip the traps too many times. They only have a couple times that they can trip them before they lose the ability to use that trap and the trap dies off. And so I'll talk more about the traps and how they work and how they use calcium to close their traps in a later video. But if you follow these simple rules, you will be successful growing these amazing plants. I hope you enjoyed this, and as always, happy growing. Let me know if you have any questions. See you soon. Bye-bye. What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well today. I thought I would do a video on Venus flytraps today and talk about dispelling the myths around these enigmatic plants. Now, probably more so than any other plant, but I can say confidently more so than any other carnivorous plant, Venus flytraps have the most false claims around them, or get the worst kind of PR, if you will. And so I thought I'd take a moment to clear the air on that. So getting right into it, myth number one, and this is going to be sort of the thing that starts at all of it, is that Venus flytraps are hard to grow. That is not anywhere close to being true. All these plants you see in front of me were, other than a few of them, were rescue plants, not even 6 months ago. When I say rescue, I mean we're literally down to the rhizome, maybe had a couple of leaves on them, and for all intents and purposes we're completely out. And so just by planting them in the proper soil and the care I've made videos on, they are now where you see them 6 months later. Probably not even 6 months later. I got them at the beginning of, probably 3 or 4 months later. So, and I've done nothing. I planted them in here. I leave them in here. I make sure they have water, but basically nature does the rest. And yeah, and so it's very hard to find plants that you could just leave like that. So very, very easy to care for as long as you give them the care that they need. And we've talked through that, like I said, on other videos as far as the proper care. Myth number 2 is that they don't need dormancy. Now, imagine you are, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years old, and you've gone your whole life getting 8 hours of sleep. And then somebody comes along and says, you know what, you don't need that sleep. That is just something that you do and because you had to, but you don't really need it. And so you might do well for a little bit, but pretty soon you're going to start to fade away. And so that's the same thing with these plants. These plants have been evolving for millions of years. And so they have come through that time frame to rely on dormancy through all that time to be able to give them a rest period and to give them that sleep that they need. And so you can get away with the first year or two of no dormancy, and just like with your sleep, you can get away with just a little bit of no sleep, but pretty quickly you're going to start to fade, and these plants are going to do the same thing. Myth number 3 is that you can feed these plants people food, and unfortunately I see that a lot on people's comments, like, hey, feed it hamburger meat, feed it, I've even seen jelly beans and stuff, it'll help with growth because of the glucose and all of these things. Again, these plants have developed with the aid of chitinase, the ability to break down the chitin exoskeleton of insects, and so they're relying on live insects to provide them the nutrition that they need, or excuse me, the energy that they need through that nitrogen. And so they have not developed, nor do they want, any people food. If you give them hamburger meat or any kind of chicken or any kind of people food, not only will you kill the trap that you've placed it in, but more often than not, you will end up killing the plant. And as far as growth, with using jelly bean hack, it might produce a little bit of glucose, but I would not recommend doing that, as it will, again, they did not develop to eat jelly beans. Another myth that goes along with the last one I just said is that these plants are tropical. They are not tropical, and they are not going to want tropical conditions. These plants are intermediate, and they want those intermediate conditions. And what do I mean by that? They want very, very bright light. A lot of tropical plants grow in the understory of plants, and Venus flytraps can handle a little dappled light, but for the most part, they want very bright, direct sunlight, upwards of 14 to 16 hours of it, as a matter of fact. And they are going to want it hot, and they are, again, going to want those cool that cool period for dormant season. So humidity, always important to every plant. However, not as important to Venus flytraps as a lot of people think that it is. You want to make sure that you give them intermediate conditions as you would any other intermediate plant. All right, and so another myth that I want to talk about is that Venus flytraps can eat non-live dead insects. And so so this one's a little bit of a quasi myth, right? You can obviously feed them dead insects, but they're not going to close all the way. So like what I have here is an example of one that is completely sealed. See how it's got a complete seal on it? That's when it starts producing the enzymes for carnivory. If you feed it dead insects, it won't continue to wiggle around and trigger those hairs that will help the trap close to a tight seal and to begin to produce the enzymes necessary to utilize and break down that food. Now, there are the potentiality, of course, that if you feed it a dead insect, it will seal up, depending on how that you've put it in there, and I've seen people who sort of massage the outside of the trap trying to artificially trigger those hairs. But for the most part, you're going to want it to feed it live insects. If you have them outdoors, they'll eat plenty on their own. But if you grow them indoors, you're going to want to give them, you can go to pet stores and get them like live mealy bugs. All right, so the final myth that I'm going to talk about in this video is, again, another quasi myth, and that is Venus flytraps have to be fed in order to survive. The reason why I'm going to call this a quasi myth is, yes, they are going to need food and capture food so they can have so they can get that fertilizer, right? Just like any other plant. They may or may not, I mean, the potential is they'll probably still survive, but they just won't do as well. However, here's the big caveat that a lot of people miss. The thing that keeps a Venus flytrap strong and growing is, just like all other plants, photosynthesis. They need the light, and in these particular cases I talked about earlier, they want a lot of it. And think about it from a logical standpoint. There is not a whole lot of surface area on these leaves, and so they're going to need a ton of light in order to be able to get the amount that they need to be able to create the energy, whether it's through sugars for the nectar or for the energy to be able to close the traps. And so they are going to want a lot of that light. So don't feel like you have to feed every single trap all the time. Certainly it's good to give them that fertilizer, that energy to get bigger and stronger and healthier, but it's more about sunlight than it is about food. If they're capturing food, great. If you want to feed them, perfect, please do so. I'm not suggesting not to feed them, but a lot of people will tend to overfeed them. They feel like, well, I got to fill up every single trap every single time, and that's certainly not the case. Think about it as if you were growing a plant and you decided to apply some sort of topical fertilizer. You're not going to want to drench that plant in fertilizer all the time, or else you're going to run the risk of giving it too much nutrients, whether it be, in this case, nitrogen, or whatever you're giving your plant. So I hope this video has helped. I hope it's helped clear up a lot of misnomers or misconceptions about these amazing, beautiful plants. The number one thing, again, was the very first myth. They are not hard to grow. If you give them the care that they need, they will do just fine for you, and they will thrive for you. Again, the majority that you see here, other than the ones that have tags, were all rescues that were just about on death's door, and just in a few short months have come back, and by next year they will be full and beautiful. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.